It's 256 days until Christmas, but this week is pretty close for rugby fans. In 2 days' time, Warren Gatland will announce his Lions team to take on the All Blacks this summer. And today in the left wing, Luke Fitzgerald will unveil his 37-man selection. It's my job to poke as many holes in it as possible. Luke, before we get to that, you've won Grand Slams, Heineken Cups, been on a Lions tour yourself, but this week you probably got more attention than all that put together for having the gall to take on Nigel Owens. How did you find the experience?
Look, I think it was great. Anytime there's good discussion about our game, I feel like it helps grow our game. It keeps all the stakeholders, involved in the game. They're chatting to, Nigel, they're chatting to myself, who's obviously played the game. And I think it's great for it. I think it helps us out. I think it means that there's engagement there. And look, it was good. I thought it was interesting to hear Nigel's take on it. Obviously, I have a completely different opinion to him. We agreed to disagree in the end. Hopefully, we'll get him on the show at some stage. It'd be nice to get some discussion about what it's like to be a referee. Some of his opinions on our discussion, and as well where he thinks the game is going. Because obviously, those guys are an essential part of it. Even though as I said before, I feel like the most important part is the game, and I always feel a good referee. It kind of seems like they're anonymous. The game just flows well. So hopefully we'll get him on the show. Yeah,
it'd be great to see you debate him in person. We'll move on to the, obviously the line selection. 2 days time. Everyone's really looking forward to seeing who Warren Gatland's picks. You've made some slightly left field calls. We're going to start with the loose head props. This is probably one of the more straightforward parts.
Yeah, it was. I think, obviously Jack McGrath's been touted as pretty much a sure thing, as well as Mako Vunipola. I think Cian Healy has earned the spot for me. I think for Leinster in the Champions Cup, he's been superb, and he was brilliant against Italy when he came on. He made big impacts during the Six Nations. So he's in there for me, just ahead of Marler, who I think is unlucky to lose out, considering he probably started most of the Six Nations with Vunipola being out injured. But that's my decision. I think it's a really strong part of the team. I think the front row is going to be really important, because I think you're against New Zealand, you're looking for one or two areas where you might have a bit of an edge. I think this could be an area for us.
Is there an early test starter there for you, or wait and see?
I think it's too close to call. I think we'll have to see how everyone gets on. There's loads of opportunity. I think there might be 7 games before the first test match, so I think there's loads of opportunity for guys to put their hand up, and I think they'll have to pick, because it's such a close call for me. I think they'll have to pick on form on the tour, and yeah, interesting to see who comes out of that.
Yeah, I don't need to take out my knives just yet. It's pretty straightforward so far. Move on to hookers now. You've gone with Roy Best, Sean Cronin, Ken Owens. Obviously, no Jamie George or Dylan Hartley. You've gone with Sean Cronin over one of them. Explain that.
Well, look, I suppose the Cronin thing for me, I've gone for the guy who I feel like could provide the biggest, I suppose, X factor, especially off a bench. I'm not sure, I don't know if he'll start, just because he's obviously been out injured for a little bit before, but I think he'll give you the most ballast, definitely off the bench. And I think that's something that you will need, or could need, against New Zealand. Someone just to change it up, and someone who's good in open play. He's an excellent tackler, but he's a brilliant ball player, and obviously, that pace that he has can catch anyone off guard. So that's why I have him in ahead of George. They're both unlucky to lose out. I have Best and Owens in ahead of Dylan Hartley, just because I feel it's a discipline thing for me. I feel like those two guys are superb. They played superbly well for Ireland and Wales during the Six Nations. I think Hartley had a bit of a mixed campaign. Obviously came in a little bit light on rugby, but for me, I think it's going to be a pressure cooker environment in New Zealand. There's no way you're going to be able to get away from it there. You're going into the shop, whatever you're doing, you're going for a walk outside the hotel, you're not going to be able to escape it. And I just feel like people who have some disciplinary issues, like he has had in the past, it could be a bit of a liability, and I wouldn't be taking a chance, especially when you've got 2 brilliant players there as well. Yeah,
moving on to tight head prop, I think there's kind of 2 nailed on people to go, and then you've gone for one slightly wild card.
Yeah, well look, no WP Nell. Obviously, that's why Thomas Francis gets in there from Wales. I know he had a tough day against France. I mean, that's our abiding memory of him is the struggle, the last kind of, I suppose, 20 minutes of the game.
One of the many players Neil Francis has slated over the years as well.
Yeah, well look, aside from him, I think we're probably, it's that one, that third spot in the tight head that we're maybe struggling to fill, or maybe have a standout candidate. Furlong and Cole are obviously the 2 standout candidates, and I think for me it's going to be Tig, and that's the one position I'd say I think there's a real, he definitely will start. I think just he's so good in the loose. Obviously Darren Cole himself, very good at scrum time and set piece. That's your first port of call, I suppose. But just in the loose, I mean, Furlong, he was unbelievable over in Chicago. Some of the tackling, there was one on Ben Smith that sticks out in my mind. There's going to be times when the big fellas are going to be exposed in wide open spaces against New Zealand. You need someone who's able and who's kind of comfortable in those scenarios. I think he's the most comfortable of them there. Plus he's got he's a very rounded player. Great handling skills, as we saw for Leinster. but it's the tackling and it's the movement around the pitch, it's the versatility he has. I think he'll be a great asset to the team out there.
Second row is probably one of the tightest places to select. There's some really good candidates who aren't even here.
Yeah, look, it was unbelievably hard to leave out a few. I mean, obviously, Devin Toner and I think Donica Ryan have been very, very solid for a long period of time. Henderson's a guy who was unlucky to lose out with his versatility as well, because he could play 6 for you. But these are the guys I've gone for. I think, Cruz is probably it sounds to me from all the chatter that he's
getting a lot of media love in the last week.
He is, but look, he had a brilliant year last year. I know he's been out injured for a while, but look, he was selected on that, and I think he's a brilliant player. The two English boys, Itoje and Launchbury, I do think that Courtney Law is a bit unlucky to lose out for me, but these two guys are brilliant. I think Itoje has that bit of versatility as well, and I'll tie that in with maybe some of the back row stuff as well, because I think that's going to be important. Look, Johnny Gray, he's the outstanding Gray brother for me. I think he was brilliant for Scotland all campaign, and he's going very well for Glasgow, so he was a bit of a shoe-in for me as well. My captain.
Why did you go with Alan Wynne-Jones as captain?
I don't want to give away my back row stuff, but that's probably the reason why. I think Alan Wynne is very experienced. He's been on a few tours. He's still playing great rugby. Alan Wynne-Jones for me, he's a shoe-in on the tour. He's my Lions captain, just based off experience, and he's a real leader around the setup. He's a good guy. He mixes in with the squad well. He knows Gatland. He knows what's required. He'll be easy for Gatland to deal with as well in terms of getting media messages out, because it's going to be, like I said earlier on, a pressure cooker environment. You need someone you can rely on there. So that's why I have Alan Wynne there. Now,
in the back row, the case for CJ Stander's admission should probably be tried in a court of law. I will try my best to cross-examine you here.
Do.
You've left him out. You've gone with O'Brien, O'Mahony, Heaslip, Falatau, Tipperidge, Vunipola and Haskell in the back row. Where is CJ Stander?
CJ Stander is not there. Look, the reason I didn't go for him was because he played most of the campaign at 6 now. Obviously, he plays loads of rugby at 8. It's not going to be an issue for him there. That's not the point. I think, for me, O'Mahony's just taken that spot for me there, and I think Itoje covers that spot. The reason that I have them in there is because I think the aerial side of it is going to be really, really important. And I feel like, for me, and I know I'm giving away some of the later selections, but I think Sexton and Farrell will both start there.
No mystery there, to be fair.
Yeah, at 10 and 12. I think Murray as well is a brilliant kicking game. I think they might pick Hogg at 15. I think kicking is going to be a huge part of playing New Zealand. You mentioned, though, Sean Cronin's there for the X factor, the ballast he brings. Surely Stander falls into the exact same category. He's dynamic ball carrying. If you need to interject something different off the bench, is he not the ideal candidate? I completely agree with that, and it's an unbelievably harsh selection.
Then where is he?
I have O'Mahony and Itoje in that 6 role. I have Sean O'Brien just in case he can cover in at 6 as well, and at 8 for that bit of carrying. Look, I have Vunipola, Falatau, and I have Heaslip there just because
Jamie Heaslip, he's injured at the moment.
He's going to be back though, and I think, Gatland will know him, he'll know Falatau. They both went on the last tour, they're both Lions series winners. That's very, very important. Obviously, Jamie was in that team that beat New Zealand as well. I think he'll go for Falatau and Vunipola for that little bit of ballast that he's looking for. I think he's already got O'Brien, Tipuric and Haskell if he wants those other ball carriers for me as well. That was why CJ gets left out. It's unbelievably harsh. I know he's playing brilliant rugby. He's a brilliant rugby player. There's no doubt about it. But this is the most hotly contested area for me. I went for a few guys ahead of him in Itoje and O'Mahony, who I think are really good in the air at the line-out time. And I think that's going to be really important against New Zealand. You have to pick 1 or 2 areas where you feel like you might be able to get on top of them. I think they're the 2 areas that we could. I think we might, the stuff in open play. I think Peter O'Mahony, by the way, doesn't get enough credit for that kind of stuff. Itoje is brilliant in open play. We all know that. But I think that was the reasoning. I think kicking is going to be really important. If you look at how Ireland beat them, they attacked them in the air. For me, that was absolutely key. And I think those guys, if you want to kick to touch or kick in the air, those 2 guys are really important.
Another person who's missing off that list is Sam Warburton. He's an unbackable 25-1 on favourite to be the Lex Lions captain. Why didn't you pick him? Because Warren Gatland will definitely bring his favourite player.
I think so, yeah. Look, I can't argue with that. He wouldn't be on my team. I think Tipuric is the guy I'd bring ahead of him. I'm always amazed that he gets picked ahead of Tipuric all the time. I think he's brilliant in Guinness Pro 12. He's brilliant at every level he plays at. I'm really surprised at that one. I rate those guys higher. I think Haskell's been brilliant for England all year. I know he had a bit of an injury at the start of the season. He was brilliant last year for England. I think he still has a huge amount to offer. I like him as a pure out-and-out 7. I think you might need a fetcher or 2. I think himself and O'Brien, Tipuric and Haskell, they're all brilliant on the deck, and I would have 1 or 2 of them, either 2 of them on the bench, and definitely 1 of them starting.
Haskell was outplayed against Ireland. He was outplayed against Wasps in 2 out of 3 weekends. You honestly think he has better credentials than Warburton and even CJ Standard, because you have O'Brien and Tipperich to cover open side. So Standard could easily slip in instead of Haskell, who hasn't played great rugby.
I think you'll need another 7 out there, and that's why I have Haskell. I think it's a really important job against New Zealand. You need someone who's an out-and-out fetcher. Yeah, look, granted he didn't do great, but I didn't think many of the English pack covered themselves in glory in the Aviva that day, and I didn't think many of the Wasps guys did either. I think he actually had some good parts in the game. He had 1 or 2 good turnovers in a pack that was beaten quite badly. I think he's a brilliant player. I really like him. I think he's playing brilliant rugby for England, and I'd say he's a big role to play. I think with the Super Rugby experience, that will actually stand to him a little bit as well. That's why I'd bring him. I think Warburton will go ahead of him, but that's my call. I really like Haskell.
I'm sure Haskell and his family will thank you for such a staunch defence, but I don't know if Warren Gatland will go with that as well.
He might not.
We'll move on to scrum half now. Probably another area where there's only really 3 outstanding candidates. Perhaps Greg Laidlaw, an outside bet to maybe dislodge Youngs.
Possibly. Look, I've heard that argument. I think Youngs is better. I think for the style of rugby, I'd like having Youngs there. I think, I don't think he'll start. I think Murray and Webb are definitely ahead of him at the moment. But I feel like he's got a strong kicking game as well. I like Ben Youngs when he's on form. I think he's got a great running game, which is something that you will need against New Zealand. He's very brave as well. That's something that you have to consider, because your scrum half is going to have to be a good tackler. They're going to make breaks here and there. You need someone to bail you out. I like Ben Youngs. He's the guy I have in there. The interesting conversation for me is Murray and Webb. That is way tighter than it was before Six Nations. I think he's playing, or Rhys Webb is playing some brilliant rugby for Ospreys and for Wales. And I think obviously Murray needs to get back pretty quick to ensure that he gets that starting bar.
Yeah, Irish fans seem to, and pundits and players seem to pencil him in automatically for that number 9 role, but Webb outplayed him even before the injury in Cardiff, and Murray hasn't played since with that arm injury. We don't know how fit he is. Yeah. Is there a chance that Webb will start, and we're just maybe looking at it with a kind of green tinted glasses?
Look, it's a possibility.
But you don't agree?
I don't actually. And look, this is all good discussion. I respect your viewpoint. I respect your viewpoint. I absolutely do. I think Rhys Webb, and he's a guy that I was talking about in our show during the Six Nations, has been a real threat for Ireland, and he proved to be. And he had a brilliant Six Nations. But I think Murray is a real standout candidate. He's a leader. I think defensively he's really, really strong. He's an excellent covering game. He can play the slow game. He can play the fast game for you either. I think his kicking is a real point of difference. And it's an area I definitely would attack New Zealand. I think depending who they pick on the wing, it could be Sevilla. I'm not sure who else they'll pick on the wing. But that was an area that Ireland really exposed against New Zealand. And if you can compete against them there, that can be a great place to start, to get yourself into the game, to get a little bit of momentum. I think Murray is as a standout kicking game. It's incredible. I know from chasing them, they stay up there for a bit, and he's very, very accurate with it. He'd be my candidate for that. Just for the defensive, I think they're quite equal going forward, but from a defensive perspective and a kicking perspective, he's a standout candidate. And
Webb would be obviously a great guy to bring off with 20 minutes to
absolutely,
go as well.
Absolutely.
Now moving on to out half, again, it's kind of straightforward. Obviously, spoiler alert, Owen Farrell has been picking the centre, so he's not gone missing.
Yeah.
Sexton's obviously nailed on. Maybe Finn Russell and Dan Biggar might be a bit of a battle, but you've gone with Biggar.
I've gone with Biggar. Look, I'm a big fan of Finn Russell. He's very brave, excellent player. I just really like Dan Biggar.
Even after his weak tackling on Sean Cronin?
I think he got caught out by Shawnee's pace. That happens a lot of people. He's definitely not the first guy to lose out there. I mean, even Shawnee Cronin made fools of some of the New Zealand guys when he came off the bench back in 2013. So, look, he's a superb player. I like him a lot. He's got a big game temperament. I love the way he's got that added bit of dimension. I talked about it earlier on about the high balls. He is unbelievable at chasing high balls. He's a great little asset to have there. He's a great tackler. You need everyone on the pitch against New Zealand to be a good tackler. And look, he runs a good show as well. So I think he deserves his place slightly ahead of Finn Russell, who's a good player as well. But that was a tight one. Johnny Sexton.
It's worth mentioning that he could come into a special group of players to have started a lot of tests on 2 series. You have to be a really top player to do that.
Johnny, yeah, of course. Well, look, he's a superb player. We all know his qualities. I played next to him for years and years. He's a great skill set. I love his handling ability. That's a real hidden gem. I think a lot of people take that for granted with Johnny, but he delivers passes right on the line. They're really crisp. He's really accurate with it. He's a great guy to run the show for you. His kicking game is superb.
Him and Barrett will be a cracking battle.
It'll be an unbelievable battle. And they had a couple of good battles there in Chicago and Dublin as well. So look, this guy is a standout performer. He has been for Leinster, has been for Ireland. He makes a big difference there. He showed that in the last few games in the Six Nations. He's a really important guy to get fit and to be ready for this series down there. Johnny's a guy who'll be the key. He's great at implementing a game plan and getting everyone to buy into it as well. He's a superb player. He's one of our standout guys. He needs to be fit if we want to win down there.
Moving on to centres now, and you've kind of taken a Clive Woodward approach of picking every single centre, it seems. This is actually the first tour since 1997 that Brian O'Driscoll won't be one of the centres going down, so a bit of a changing of the guard, I guess. Just talk it through some of your selections here.
Yeah, look, there's a couple of guys in there who are a bit versatile. I've Elliot Daly in there, and I have Farrell as well, who'll obviously cover 10, but Daly covers quite a bit. He covers wing, he covers fullback if needs be. Robbie Henshaw as well is a guy who can cover both centre positions and fullback. So there's loads of versatility there. That was something that, you never want to get caught too much in that, but I would like to have options throughout my tour. They're all outstanding players as well. Look, interesting to see who starts there. I think for me, Farrell will have that 12 role pretty much nailed down at this stage. Interesting to see how the tour progresses, how everyone stays fit, if he actually likes the role, if he works well with probably Johnny, who'll start in there. That's an interesting space to watch. Look, I think there's loads of talent here. I like Williams and Davies. They were both pretty strong for Wales throughout the Six Nations. For me at the moment, I probably have Davies as my 13 with Farrell as my 12. Very close call between himself and Henshaw. Interesting to see how Joseph tours. He's a guy who, he looked brilliant against Scotland, but then he was kind of a bit anonymous, in other parts of the campaign against stingier defences. So lots of interesting talking points there. I think the key thing and what the reason I pick so many of these guys in this area is I think this is their first port of call, but they can provide loads of versatility in different areas if needs be, which is something that you might need with a lot of games on the tour. Yeah,
there's no real weakness in the All Black side, but Fekitoa and Crotty have played a bit in the centre. They really aren't the players that Nanu and Conrad Smith were at their peak, so potentially it could be an area where the Lions could get some change.
Yeah, I think so, and I think if they can get it, if they can get a combination bedded down early in the tour, that'll be a real challenge in this area, because for me personally, I don't think there's anyone that stands out massively bar Farrell on that 12 role yet. I think it's a really tight call for that 13 spot.
Robbie Henshaw originally was maybe touted as Brian O'Driscoll's replacement in the 13 jersey. He's pretty much exclusively a 12 now. Do you think he's maybe lost the ability to play 13 because he's just been playing such a kind of, basic role as a 12, but just carrying and tackling his heart out has been the kind of first port of call for him?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting talking point. I thought he looked very good in there in the playmaking role against the Ospreys on the weekend. So we know he's capable of doing that if there's a game plan that probably allows for him to do that. Which I think Stuart Lancaster's game is probably a little bit more expansive because, let's face it, he has more time with the Leinster guys to implement a game plan like that. And I think at international level, oftentimes you have to play the percentages, and oftentimes that isn't a percentage play to have your 12 playmaking in what is very stingy defensive kind of competition, the Six Nations, especially in the earlier rounds. So he's definitely capable of doing that. It'd be great to see Robbie in there. He's been playing brilliant. He was Ireland's standout player, our most consistent throughout the Six Nations, in my opinion. Interesting to see how he goes. I think he's pretty much a nailed on. Definitely a tourist. It'll be just. It's real hard. I think there's a lot of guys battling for that 13th spot. There's pretty much 5 in there from what I can see. So, hard one to call. But he's definitely capable of doing it. Just to close on that.
We're moving on to the back three now. As a former Lions wing yourself, you've gone with 4 very good wings. How does it stack up to the class of 2009?
They're missing a few key faces there. No, but look, this is a really strong group. There's a couple of guys there, like I said, Elliot Daly. I think Williams could slot in there if he needed him to as well. He's played 1 or 2, I think, maybe for Wales there. But look, for me, this is a really interesting spot. There's a couple of guys who are versatile here who will come and look at the fullbacks. I've only selected 1 fullback, but I think Williams and Zebo could cover that role for you if you needed. I think this is a tight one. I think George North is probably everyone's favourite to get in there, but I'm not sure he'd be my first selection.
Liam Williams playing outstanding rugby.
Liam Williams has been playing outstanding rugby for a long time. He's brilliant under the high ball, which I said earlier on I think is a really important part of the game against New Zealand. I really like Jack Noel. I think he's a brilliant player.
Do you like that rat's tail?
I'm not so keen on the rat's tail, but listen, I had one back in the day as well. Look, everyone's
made
mistakes. Everyone's made mistakes. But look, I think this guy is a brilliant player. He's outstanding for Exeter all the time. I picked him ahead of Watson, ahead of Tommy Seymour, a couple of guys who are excellent finishers and great rugby players as well. But I think this guy's a bit of a complete package. He can show up anywhere on the pitch. Anytime he seems to get the ball, he's a threat. He can pass. He's an excellent tackler. So the image that stuck out for me was that try-saving tackle. Was it last year or 2 years ago on Robbie Henshaw on the corner? I think it was last year. He's a brilliant player. He's a guy I really like. He's definitely a guy I'd bring on tour. I think he's a complete player, which is what you need against New Zealand.
Simon Zebo's kind of been on the periphery of the Lions conversation. Like, not many people, I think, have had him as, you know, a definite to go. You've picked him in your team, or your squad rather. Why do you think Warren Gatland might decide to bring him?
Well, I thought he was brilliant against New Zealand in Chicago, and I thought he was excellent against them at home.
Almost lost his head in Dublin from Fekatoa.
Yeah, well, that should have been a red card, you know, but look, that's a different conversation. I think this guy is really talented. I think he's another playmaker for you. It's something that I harp on about quite a lot, but that's something that's important against New Zealand. And I think he's excellent in the air. That's a key thing for me. I like that. I like a guy who's willing to try things against New Zealand, because they will let you do that. You'll get out, like, it can be a really open game against them, and he's a guy who can break it open with a nice bit of footwork or a nice bit of handling. I think the important thing to get from these selections, that I think Zebo and Williams, for me, they're two excellent, outstanding guys in the air, and I think that's a really important part of the game against them.
I'm going to do for Chris Ashton now what you did for James Haskell earlier, and really defend him. He's probably the form wing in Europe if you take in Champions Cup. He's kind of been blacklisted from the international arena in a way Dylan Hartley was not, despite similar disciplinary records. Is there no place from the team? I know maybe defensively he's a bit suspect, but attacking wise, the support line he runs, all the tries he scores, is he not an ideal candidate to go down this tour?
I can see your side of the argument, Will. He's an excellent player. He's a superb finisher. I love the trail lines and the support lines he takes throughout the game. I think, and it's the reason why I didn't pick Hartley in my team, the disciplinary stuff, the silly stuff, you just can't afford it down there. You can't afford to play against these guys with 14 men. The discipline has to be really, really strong. You can't give them easy ins as well, penalties on the pitch, silly things like that. I'd pick guys that are reliable on that front and who aren't going to do stupid stuff outside the setup or on the pitch. And I think that's a really important consideration against them. Moving
on to the final area of selection now. I accused you of being kind of Clive Woodward-esque earlier, but this is probably the exact opposite. You've only picked one full back. Well, look, maybe Clive had a bit of a point, because this looks like lunacy just to have. He looked all on his own there.
Yeah, he's the lone soldier here. Look, he was brilliant. Did
he want to play every game? Is it
2 years in a row? He's been the RBS Six Nations player of the tournament. Look, in attack, he's so exciting. He's got a brilliant kicking game. A little bit suspect defensively, in my opinion. It's a part of the game. I think he definitely can be good at it. Physically, he's very strong. It's just a matter of concentrating and being committed in the area. So I think in a big game, he would get that right. I have Liam Williams and Simon Zebo, in case, or even Elliot Daly, if I need to, swap him in and out. But he's the outstanding candidate at the moment.
So why have you left out, Mike Brown, Rob Carney, Lee Halfpenny, the guys who started in the Six Nations for the other teams?
Well, Mike Brown would be the other guy that I just ran out of space, to be honest, Will, if I'm being really blunt and honest. Mike Brown would be the guy I would have brought, but I think Liam Williams and Simon Zebo do a pretty good job, and they're more versatile than Brown. Brown is an out-and-out fullback.
Yeah, I meant to touch on this during the Senders, but I can segue in now. Will Warren Gatland pick some of his old favourites, you think, when he announces the squad on Wednesday? Halfpenny. Jamie Roberts is getting a lot of kind of build-up in the media now as well. Is there a chance he unveils the squad with a raft of maybe slightly out-of-form players, just like Clive Woodward did in 2005 when he brought every single member of the World Cup team, no matter what age they were?
Well, he declined to select the squad. Really, he just picked everyone. But look, I could see the reasoning behind Clive Woodward as well. Look, I met the guy 1 or 2 times. He's actually a really bright rugby brain. That goes without saying. He's won a World Cup. So I could see the reasoning behind that. Obviously, it didn't work out so well, and hindsight is great for all of us. I think he might, to bring it back to Gatland, he may well bring a couple of guys that he relies on. You have to do that. You've got a very short window to implement ideas, to get the culture of the environment across to people. It's nice to have people who are used to that, and I think that's probably why it's like, Joe Schmidt, bringing in a few guys who are maybe old favourites during the Six Nations. You need to have guys who know the culture, who know the setup, who know what's expected. And I think that's a really important consideration for the coach to make. I think I've 1 or 2 guys in there who fall into that category. But I think it's an important thing for the coach to do.
So some very interesting selections there, Luke. I think if James Haskell gets a nod, he owes you a dinner. Thanks so much for watching Luke's selection preview. Make sure to come back on Wednesday after the squad is announced to get all the best reaction on independent.ie/sport. And we'll be back next Monday at 5 p.m. live on the Independent Sport Facebook page to look back on what is hopefully 2 Champions Cup wins for Leinster and Munster. Until then, goodbye.